So concerns of comparative literature in the third world countries. Okay. And towards the end of 20th century, comparative literature faced a troubled history. Comparative literature gradually, it was getting a troublesome history, regarding its ground, regarding its concern, comparative literature. And actually this subject was in crisis in the Western countries, that we have perceived in our previous class. That is actually the Western countries, the graduate has been moving from the other disciplines, gender studies, translation studies and others. And for this reason it is termed that towards the end of the second 20th century, comparative literature had been in a crisis period. But it is worthy to mention that in the Western European countries, two states were passing through nationalism, previously okay, so it is worthy to mention that in the Western European countries and the states were passing through the nationalism. Why? That means after the Second World War, actually many countries, they got independence. And for this reason, as Shapur Majumdar said, that there was an upliftment of national consciousness. They got their national identity through the window of comparative literature. Okay, in the Western countries that is different. And previously, and that nationalism that was previously absent in the capitalist Western countries, they had the norms. What was the norms? In our previous class we have got that is Eurocentric norms of superiority, and they had also another norms, that is Eurocentric norms, that is they call or think themselves superior, and other, if they call themselves superior, of course there are some other parts they are called inferior or minor, in terms of literature and culture and nationalism. In terms of literature, in terms of nationalism, in terms of culture. They thought that their nationality is, their culture is rich, and their literature is rich. And these countries were revising their syllabuses, and in Eastern countries, or in the Orient or the Asian or African countries, they had been revising their syllabus based on nationalism. That means national consciousness. The student number was falling in comparative literature in the West, and many comparatists felt uneasiness, so they started to write defensive research paper, and the definition of comparative literature remained on the old idea that comparative literature is a binary subject. Binary subject, that means putting two subjects together, they will be simply comparing. But previously we have got a different notion that through the...
Clear it?
Is it?
Can you clear it?
Yes, I am clearing. Okay, so binary subject means putting two things together. Okay. So when Western countries, they were getting that comparative literature will be a literature to compare one literature to other, simply that subject, they had been talking. And for this reason, they had been talking, that is, comparative literature simply the comparison. But through the comparison, the other parts of this world, they got a different perspectives of comparative literature. And not only the simply two writers or the two texts will be compared, but it would have a far extended meaning in terms of sociology, in terms of culture, in terms of nationalism, in the aspects of African and Asian countries. That is their prospects. And for this reason, the Asian and African countries, they started revising their syllabus based on comparative literature, and in the same way in the Western countries, they are moving towards comparative literature and towards another field like translation studies and others. So how to define this different system became complex and unsolved issue. Okay, so in one hand, in African and Asian perspectives, they say that through the window of comparative literature, we are getting a new identity, especially our nationalism is enhanced. Enhanced means when nationalism will be enhanced, they will say their literature is great, whatever may be the position. The African and Asian literature, they said that our literature is great, our culture is great, and our civilization is great, everything is great. But in terms of Eurocentric perspective, they say that we are the superior in terms of literature, culture, and other perspectives of life and society. Okay. So these are the two different perspectives that was developed only for the basis of comparative literature. And for this reason, comparative literature lost its way in the Western countries. Even the course like literary theory and post-colonial theories was in extended field of study. Okay, so comparative literature, according to the Western perspective, they say that it will be simply comparison. But other fields relating post-colonial studies and the theoretical studies, this studies enhanced in comparative literature. But comparative literature was expanding and developing in many other parts in the world, linking to the question of national culture and identity. That I have said. Actually, it simply will be comparing the literature. However, it will be, that means comparative literature will be applied for enhancing national culture and national identity. National culture and national identity. And for this reason, national and cultural identity, comparative literature becomes the groundbreaking subject outside Europe. Outside Europe. They don't have the European countries and the West American countries. North American.
What do you mean by the groundbreaking subject?
Groundbreaking, that means groundbreaking in Bangla ki? Bangla jano? Actually very important. Very important subject. Okay. So comparative literature becomes the groundbreaking subject outside Europe. In Europe, they have they thought that their culture is great, their literature is great. But through the comparative literature, especially in Asian or the African countries, their national culture and national identity was enhanced. And for this reason, comparative literature became important, not groundbreaking. Yes, groundbreaking, an important subject in Europe, outside Europe, and outside the United States of America. Okay. For what? For national and cultural identity. And in the third world and the Far East, the attitude and aspects of comparative literature changed, coinciding to other changes like feminist criticism, which has oriented, which has dominated, which has questioned the male orientation and the domination of cultural theory. So, national identity, culture, another perspective was there. That is the male orientation and domination of cultural history. That means regarding gender studies or women's studies. So, male orientation and domination in cultural history. And postmodernist theory revalues the role of leaders. Role of leaders. Not role of writers. They have their great writer, they have their reader writers. So they have come up with three ideas, that is male orientation and domination of cultural history, and also in postmodernist theory, that is revalues the role of leaders. And what is the role of the